my instruments.
Yep, we're in the flux vortex.
Or VFR from here on.
What's VFR?
Means you gotta see where you're going.
Can't see anything.
Exactly. Ain't that a bitch?
Welcome back to Wings of Bibles. I'm Dustin, and today we'll be covering Visual Flight Rules, or VFR. Starting off here, we have 91-151, Fuel Requirements for Flight in VFR Conditions. 91-151 says, no person may begin a flight in an airplane under VFR conditions unless, considering wind and forecast weather conditions, there is enough fuel to fly to the first point of intended landing and assuming normal cruising speed during the day to fly after that for at least 30 minutes or at night to fly after that for at least 45 minutes. Now, I don't necessarily agree with this. My personal minimums are a bit higher. So, for example, during the day, I want at least 45 minutes, and at night, I want at least an hour of fuel reserves. Part B says, no person may begin a flight in a rotorcraft under VFR conditions unless, considering wind and forecast weather conditions, there is enough fuel to fly to the first point of intended landing and assuming normal cruising speed to fly after that for at least 20 minutes. So, in an airplane, during the day you need 30 minutes, and at night you need 45 minutes. If you're in a rotorcraft, you need at least 20 minutes. Next we have 91-153, VFR Flight Plan, Information Required. So this is the information required on a VFR flight plan. Unless otherwise authorized by ATC, each person filing a VFR flight plan shall include in it the following information: the aircraft identification number, and if necessary, its radio call sign, the type of the aircraft, or in the case of a formation flight, the type of each aircraft and the number of aircraft in the formation, the full name and address of the pilot in command, or in the case of a formation flight, the formation commander, the point and proposed time of departure, the proposed route, cruising altitude or flight level, and true airspeed at that altitude, the point of first intended landing and the estimated elapsed time until over that point, the amount of fuel on board in hours, the number of persons in the aircraft, except where that information is otherwise readily available to the FAA, any other information the pilot in command or ATC believes is necessary for ATC purposes. Now, all this information is important for planning and search and rescue efforts. With this information, if you go down in the middle of nowhere and you have to put the airplane on the ground, they can use this information to find you. Cancellation. When a flight plan has been activated, the pilot in command, upon canceling or completing the flight under the flight plan, shall notify an FAA flight service station or ATC facility. Now, this is important here. When you activate a flight plan and you go to your intended point of landing, you have to cancel. The reason being is, if you don't cancel, they will start search and rescue operations. So how those search and rescue operations work is using this information, like your phone number and your departure airport. First, they'll call the departure airport to make sure you even got off the ground. Next, they'll call your point of arrival. They'll call that airport to see if you made it there. And then, if they don't get any answer from those people, they will call you to see if you made it. And if you don't answer, then they start the search and rescue operations. And guess who has to foot the bill for those search and rescue operations? That's right, it's you that has to foot the bill. Now we have 91-155, Basic VFR Weather Minimums. Except as provided in paragraph B of this section and 91-157, no person may operate an aircraft under VFR when the flight visibility is less or at a distance from clouds that is less than that prescribed for the corresponding altitude and class of airspace in the following table. So we'll just read through this table real quick. In Class Alpha airspace, flight visibility is not applicable because in Class Alpha airspace, you are IFR, and distance from clouds is not applicable because you're IFR as well. In Class Bravo, flight visibility is 3 statute miles, and then you have to be clear of clouds in Class Bravo. In Class Charlie, flight visibility has to be 3 statute miles, and you have to be 500 feet below, 1,000 feet above, and 2,000 feet horizontally from the clouds. Class Delta, flight visibility 3 statute miles, 500 feet below, 1,000 feet above, and 2,000 feet horizontally. Now Class E is divided into 2 sections. If you're less than 10,000 feet MSL, your flight visibility has to be 3 statute miles, 500 feet below the clouds, 1,000 feet above the clouds, and 2,000 feet horizontally of clouds. When you're at or above 10,000 feet MSL, the minimums change. The flight visibility has to be 5 statute miles, 1,000 feet below, 1,000 feet above, and 1 statute mile horizontally. In Class G airspace, 1,200 feet or less above the surface, regardless of MSL altitude. For aircraft other than helicopters, during the day, 91-55, it has to be 1 statute mile, clear of clouds. Now during the night, those minimums are increased. Your flight visibility has to be 3 statute miles, 500 feet below, 1,000 feet above, and 2,000 feet horizontally. Now it changes for helicopters. I won't go into the helicopters here, but we'll move on from that. In Class Golf airspace, notwithstanding the provisions of paragraph A of this section, the following operations may be conducted in Class Golf airspace below 1,200 feet above the surface. So when you're in Class Golf airspace, the following operations can be conducted. These are the operations that can be conducted in Class Golf airspace below 1,200 feet above the surface. Helicopter. A helicopter may be operated clear of clouds in an airport traffic pattern within half a mile of the runway or helipad of intended landing if the flight visibility is not less than half statute mile. Airplane powered parachute or weight shift control aircraft, if the visibility is less than 3 statute miles but not less than 1 statute mile during night hours, and you are operating in an airport traffic pattern within half a mile of the runway, you may operate an airplane powered parachute or weight shift control aircraft clear of clouds. Except as provided in 91-157, no person may operate an aircraft beneath the ceiling under VFR within the lateral boundaries of controlled airspace designated to the surface for an airport when the ceiling is less than 1,000 feet. Except as provided in 91-157 of this part, which we're going to go over in a bit, no person may take off or land an aircraft or enter the traffic pattern of an airport under VFR within the lateral boundaries of the surface areas of Class Bravo, Class Charlie, Class Delta, or Class Echo airspace designated for an airport, unless ground visibility at that airport is at least 3 statute miles, or if ground visibility is not reported at that airport, unless flight visibility during landing or takeoff or while operating in the traffic pattern is at least 3 statute miles. For the purpose of this section, an aircraft operating at the base altitude of a Class Echo airspace area is considered to be within the airspace directly below that area. Up next, we have 91-157, Special VFR Weather Minimums. Except as provided in Appendix D, Section 3 of this part, special VFR operations may be conducted under the weather minimums and requirements of this section instead of those contained in 9155, below 10,000 feet MSL, within the airspace contained by the upward extension of the lateral boundaries of the controlled airspace designated to the surface for an airport. Special VFR operations may only be conducted. So these are the requirements for special VFR operations. With an ATC clearance, clear of clouds, except for helicopters when flight visibility is at least 1 statute mile, and except for helicopters between sunrise and sunset, or in Alaska when the sun is 6 degrees or less below the horizon, unless the person being granted the ATC clearance meets the applicable requirements for instrument flight under 61 of this chapter, and the aircraft is equipped as required in 91205D. No person may take off or land an aircraft other than a helicopter under special VFR unless ground visibility is at least 1 statute mile, or if ground visibility is not reported, unless flight visibility is at least 1 statute mile. For the purposes of this paragraph, the term flight visibility includes the visibility from the cockpit of an aircraft in takeoff position if the flight is conducted under this Part 91, and the airport at which the aircraft is located is a satellite airport that does not have weather reporting capabilities. The determination of visibility by a pilot in accordance with paragraph C2 of this section is not an official weather report or an official ground visibility report. Now we have 91-159, VFR cruising altitude or flight level. Except while holding in a holding pattern of 2 minutes or less, or while turning, each person operating an aircraft under VFR in level cruising flight more than 3,000 feet above the surface shall maintain the appropriate altitude or flight level prescribed below, unless otherwise authorized by ATC. When operating below 18,000 feet and on a magnetic course of 0 degrees through 179 degrees, any odd 1,000-foot MSL altitude plus 500 feet, such as 3,500, 5,500, or 7,500, or on a magnetic course of 180 degrees through 359 degrees, any even 1,000-foot MSL altitude plus 500 feet, such as 4,500 feet, 6,500 feet, or 8,500 feet. When operating above 18,000 feet MSL, maintain the altitude or flight level assigned by ATC. Now, a little saying you can repeat to remember this is east is odd and west is best. So east is odd, so you're going to be at a odd altitude plus 500 feet if you're heading east. And west is best, so you're going to fly at an even altitude plus 500 feet if you're flying to the west. Finally, we have 91-161, special awareness training required for pilots flying under visual flight rules within a 60 nautical mile radius of the Washington, D.C. VOR DME. Operations within a 60 nautical mile radius of Washington, D.C. VOR DME under visual flight rules, VFR. Except as provided under paragraph E of this section, no person may serve as a pilot in command or as second in command of an aircraft while flying within a 60 nautical mile radius of the DCA VOR DME under VFR unless that pilot has completed special awareness training and holds a certificate of training completion. Special awareness training. The special awareness training consists of information to educate pilots about the procedures for flying in the Washington, D.C. area and, more generally, in other types of special use airspace. This free training is available on the FAA's website. Upon completion of the training, each person will need to print out a copy of the certificate of training completion. Inspection of certificate of training completion. Each person who holds a certificate for completing the special awareness training must present it for inspection upon request from an authorized representative of the FAA, an authorized representative of the National Transportation Safety Board, any federal, state, or local law enforcement officer, or an authorized representative of the Transportation Security Administration. Emergency declared. The failure to complete the Special Awareness Training course on flying in and around the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area is not a violation of this section if an emergency is declared by the pilot as described under 91.3, or there was a failure of two-way radio communications when operating under IFR as described under 91.185. Exceptions. The requirements of this section do not apply if the flight is being performed in an aircraft of an air ambulance operator certificated to conduct Part 135 operations under this chapter, the U.S. Armed Forces, or a law enforcement agency. And that's going to do it for this video on visual flight rules. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one. See ya!